to call the meeting back to order at 6:02. First, we'll start with a roll call. Stuart Lander.
Here.
Brad Shear.
Here.
Paula Whitford. Michelle Brousseau.
Here.
Kate Massinati.
Here.
James Restivo.
Here.
I, Carol Vetter, am here. You moved around. You almost tricked me.
No.
All right. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Do I have a motion to seal the minutes of the executive session?
Make a motion to seal the minutes of executive session.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. There were no votes taken in executive session. Next up, we have comments from the community.
Nobody? Yeah.
Does anybody wish to come to the podium at this time? All right, if nobody wishes to, then we will close community comment and move right along to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. I will turn it over to the superintendent for his report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of the community and the public. Wait for the presentation to come on up. In my report this evening, I'm going to give a very high overview of the accountability results that were just released by the Department of Education. This is again, for those who don't know, this is the star ratings that come on out and is required under federal law. But how each state does their accountability varies state to state. Again, obviously, we'll focus here in Rhode Island and our most recent results. Next slide, please. So in terms of key considerations, regardless of which school or stars or accountability metric that we are looking at, I would just like to remind folks that these are, again, metrics, and each one and how they are scored can vary. However, there are some rules of thumb that I need people or would like people to be aware of. The first is that this is not just a year-to-year comparison, is that star scores are, depending on the category, comparing it or averaging at least 2 years of student data and comparing it to one another. The piece of that I'd also like to highlight is that as one group comes in, and what I'll refer to as a cohort, so as 1 year of scores come in, a previous year's scores come out. And what happens to that average? So ultimately that average changes every single year because, last year's accountability star ratings were rated for the 22-23 and 23-24. And when you're taking averages of those 2 years, that's not the same average that we're comparing to this year, because the 22-23 year, in some cases, but not all, has fallen out. And so it is not an apples to apples always comparison. Okay, so the average that we are dealing with, it's going to be different because of the 2 years of data that we're comparing to. It is not a set level. It is not, 80%. It could be 80% because of these two class or these 2 years brought together. But then when that past school year is no longer being factored in the new school year, the new successful baseline could be lower than the one that was looked at, because the new average could be 75%. Because we're dealing with, again, huge cohorts of students that have fallen out. So again, we're averaging multiple years of data, not just a comparison from year to year. The number of years, the data that's used in the calculations depends on the size of the subgroup. So what the essentially, for any student subgroup to become a official reportable or counts towards your accountability, is that the group of students must hit 20 students. If you do that in 1 year, you use that 1 year of data. If you don't, so for example, if we are taking a look generally, students with disabilities, from a district perspective, we'll hit that N size of 20 every single year. Why? We've got across grades 3, across a huge spectrum. However, when we start getting into the school level, some schools will have that 20 in 1 year, but some schools won't. Some schools might have 15 1 year. So what the Department of Education does is they say, we're going to use as many years of data as it takes to get to that 20 N size. If it takes us 1 year, it's included. If it takes us 2 years, 2 years is included. It may take us 3 years. And if after 3 years, you still don't hit that N size of 20, it will be, and it may be, you'll see on some report cards on certain schools, it's reported, but it is not included in the school's scores. So for example, when we get to Matunic Elementary will have a focus for students with disabilities on achievement. What they do not have a focus on is achievement and growth. Why? Because they did not have enough students to qualify for the growth category. Whereas when we go to West Kingston, you'll see that West Kingston qualifies for achievement and growth. Why? Because over the past 2 years, they've hit an N size of 20. Okay, so this is why certain things will be reported for the district and not for schools, or why it might be in some schools, but not in others. So as you go and investigate these in greater detail, some things to keep in mind, that it is, again, not a strictly year-to-year comparison. And again, the number of years that are included will depend on the number of students it takes to quote unquote qualify. The one last piece that I will not read off the slide, but I want to make sure, because this does come up with not only an accountability, but we saw this in our state testing scores, that I would just like to urge people is, when you have small cohort sizes or small school sizes, small changes in student performance can have a very large impact. So just something to consider, that the change of 5 to 6 students at Matunic Elementary does not have the same impact as 5 to 6 students at Peacedale, because of the sheer number of students that we're talking about. So something to keep in mind. And for the next slide, please. In the interest of time, essentially what this chart shows you is the amount of years of reporting that are traditionally done for each element that can be reported on. And again, that changes over time. RIDE can put in a change to their federal plan, and it will change. For example, the Diploma Plus indicators you'll see there has an asterisk of 1 put next to it. That changed. It used to be 1 to 3 years of data, but because the new measurement was added into what that criteria is, they can no longer take 3 years of data because it just doesn't exist. So again, comparing years or longest way around the barn to say that what constitutes 4 stars this year is different than what constituted 4 stars 4 years ago, 5 years ago, potentially even last year. So something to consider. Next slide, please. Okay, last but not least, before I start getting into district and school-based measures, is that you'll see on this on certain school reports that it will say maximum number of stars. So when you see the maximum number of stars, a school can only have as many stars awarded to it as its lowest band. So even if we qualify, for example, as a 5, let's say we had a school that qualified for all of those measures as 5 stars, with the exception of achievement and growth was 3 stars is all they got. Even if every single other category was there and we qualified for and we got 5 stars, it would still be a 3-star school. The highest level of stars you can attain is your lowest performance. Okay. With that all being said, to summarize, the summary of the district results is we have very similar results to last year. We have the total number of points is approximately the same. However, how those points were accumulated have changed. So for example, in last school year, we received as a district 5 points under the growth category. Whereas if you slide over to 24-25, we only received 4 points in growth. However, we made up for that as a district because what you'll see below in English language proficiency, which was 2 points, we now have 3 points. So again, what our accountability is at right now is ultimately on a points or on a total basis is the same for last year. However, where those points are being added or deducted has changed slightly. We have gone, as you see from this, we have gone down a little bit in the growth points awarded, up in the English language proficiency, stayed the same in achievement and graduation rate, went up in our diploma plus measure, and stayed the same in our school quality of student subscores, or excuse me, school quality and student success. What's difficult to see, especially for those viewing at home, because it's at the bottom of the slide, my apologies, is that in terms of schools identified or the number of subgroups that we qualify for what's referred to as TSI, it was described in an earlier slide, we have reduced those numbers. Specifically, we are no longer a TSI for school, or excuse me, TSI school for economically disadvantaged students in our graduation rate. So we have successfully increased those metrics to no longer have that be an area of focus, as well as Broad Rock Middle School has left the both TSI and ATSI rankings for students with disabilities based on the latest rankings.
Excuse me,
Yes, sir.
one quick question. What exactly is defined by growth?
It will. Yep. So the question was, what exactly is meant by growth? So if you think back to the report on state test scores that was most recently done. Every student is classified based on certain demographic factors and anticipated growth on state test scores. How they perform compared to the prior year based on their statewide comparisons, they are put into a tier of low growth, average growth, or high growth. And so what the growth aspect is taking those ultimately those percentages of students with low, medium, or low, typical, and high growth, and we are given a certain number of points, obviously more so towards high growth and on tier, and less scores for low growth, and those are put into the formula.
Ask a question about, just follow up on that. Would you expect that as achievement improves, growth would slow because there's less room to grow?
So that's one piece. The other piece is that the reason that they're not tied, and I was doing this as I'm going like, why are they not, why are they not included in certain things as I'm going through different schools, is we also have to remember that third graders won't be included. They don't have growth scores because that's the first year that they take the test. So what percentage of in our elementary schools have students come in, or have students come in who are not coming in from Rhode Island and don't have a baseline score to get in. So yeah, those are some definite factors, as well as, yeah, do they have exceptional growth and could that be sustained? So even if they had high growth and went to typical growth, are we being, are you being challenged? Yes, you're being challenged by past success. Okay, so next slide. This is just a breakdown. These are the exact same scores, but broken down into the smaller categories of what specifically goes into achievement. As you'll see, achievement in ELA, achievement in math and science proficiency. And then you'll see that growth is then growth in ELA, growth in math, et cetera, et cetera. And so you can see then that on the postgraduate or diploma plus measures that we went up in, is that you see then you'll see the commissioner seal and post-secondary success, where last year we received a total of 4 points. We then see the commissioner seal number stayed the same at 2 points award, with post-secondary success going from a 2 up to a 3, which pushed us to that next level. Next slide, please.
Mr. Pedraza,
Yes.
before you go on to that next slide, can I
Yes.
just ask a quick question here?
Sure.
When we're looking at, like the achievement, the two top bars, the achievement in ELA and the achievement in math, are we looking at comparing, for example, eighth graders to their score as seventh graders?
So that would be reflected in growth in terms of the difference in scores. So if they changed from 7th to 8th, but what
Okay.
we are looking at is we are looking at SAT and RICAS placed together for ELA. So these are again district-wide proficiency measures or scores
Okay.
for our entire grades 3 through 11.
So there are cut scores for the Rhode Island test and cut scores for the SATs.
Yes.
Thank you.
So overall, in terms of our district level performance, is this ultimately I put up here the academic achievement. As much as this is a difficult thing to discuss and figure out which counts for what and what metrics are going into each one, I will give credit where credit is due, that RIDE has created a very nice new front-facing district report. And here you can see and this is one of those pieces that makes things a little bit more easily understandable, or at least nicer to look at rather than formulas. is again, our ultimately our district level performance in terms of academic measures. Again, this is in comparison. What I will warn people on though is please do not go with just that red is bad. Because you'll see that our 4-year graduation rate overall as a district went up to 92.5%, and we went up 1.9%, but they, for some reason, have it as red. So also, again, I'd like to highlight again the chronic absenteeism. That rate we are going down, but that is a good thing. We want to go down in that metric. So any questions before we briefly go into the school metrics? Okay, and 2 more slides, please. Next 2 slides. Slide. Okay, Matunic. Matunic is as you can see, is a 4-star school. If you take a look at achievement and growth, and if you go all the way across to that max school rating, it says 4 stars. So ultimately, again, Matunic is ranked on achievement and growth and school quality and student success. Obviously, elementary school students are not graduating, so Diploma Plus measures, graduation rate don't count. English language proficiency, because there are less than 20 students, it is not something that goes in. So ultimately, even if those did count for Matunic, the most they can be is that they are a 4-star school, which once again they are this school year, or excuse me, last school year. Next slide, please. Looking at those academic matrices, you can see that again, ELA proficiency, math proficiency, science proficiency, and chronic absenteeism are the main factors that are going in towards that performance. You do see a decline as a school. Accordingly, why they would qualify for the maximum of 4 stars, which in fact they did receive. Next slide, please. We get to Peacedale. Peacedale is again a 3-star school. I would like to highlight though that last year Peacedale was the only one of our schools that did not have a TSI or targeted support intervention plan that was required, and they maintained that as well. So they continue to not have be identified as TSI or ATSI. We also though see that max school rating of 3 stars is because of achievement and growth. Again, it's not because it's not being made. It's just that the number of points that we qualify for under math, ELA, and science total up a total of 3. Because actually one difference also from Matunic is that low performing subgroups or TSI, they were a max rating of 4 stars, where you can see that Peacedale Elementary it has the potential to be a 5-star school. So if they did qualify for a higher achievement and growth, it would they would not have any low performing subgroups identified, which is again testament to the work that's been done as part of their TSI plans. Next slide, please. Again, those 4 core metrics that go through some large growth again for those 2 years of cohorts that are being placed in, and in many cases are helping to drive up some of those LEA scores, as well as they're not driving them up. They are approaching those benchmarks. And again, those benchmarks, once again, when we take a look at all of them, that is as a district. So again, our entire mathematics, our entire ELA proficiency, not just in comparison to our elementary schools. Next slide, please. Here you see West Kingston. West Kingston, again, achievement and growth being the limiting factor. Here, though, we do see that they do qualify for English language proficiency. And so you see that that is shaded and has a max school rating applied to it. However, if that were to be, or if that ranking were to be able to go into effect, it would be a 5, we would, or do rank as a 5-star, as well as those school quality and student success. West Kingston, though, does have a low performing subgroup for students with disabilities in achievement and growth, as does Matunic, as does South Kingstown High School, that again, we continue to work on and identify. Next slide, please. Here we have the 4 common metrics in terms of performance that RIDE is prominently displaying. And that again compares to the ELA, or excuse me, the LEA, or local education agency, and the state. Next slide, please. Broad Rock Middle School, a 3-star school once again. Here we see achievement and growth. What we see also compared to last year is we also see the English language proficiency in terms of being scored at a 4-star level, as well as school quality and student success at 4 stars. But well, what I highlight is that low performing subgroup, or TSI, qualifies as 5 stars, representative of those subgroups that came off that were present in prior school years. Next slide. Here we have the 4 metrics in ELA, math, science, and chronic absenteeism. And next slide. Dr. McGarr, don't start to itch too much. He is very focused as South Kingstown High School is once again a 4-star school according to the Department of Education rankings. And we are right there on the cusp. We're 1 metric away from achieving that 5-star across all metrics. As you'll see, or as you see there, the achievement and growth score and the points earned is 14, which I believe is 1 below the 5-star threshold. So, and the graduation rate, which obviously does count towards South Kingstown High School, the number of English language proficiency students, we do qualify for that using various years of data, would be scored at, or is scored at 5 stars. Diploma plus measures that this district and school has worked on, and that was highlighted in the change in district performance, is also ranked at a 5-star, and a school quality and student success factor also at 5 stars. We do have low performing subgroups, or TSI, for students with disabilities, as well as ATSI for the graduation rate of students with disabilities, which we've talked about in prior reports with our transition program being at historic capacity numbers. Next slide, please. And you see we've included more than just the 4 metrics, but also those of the 4-year graduation rate and the post-secondary enrollment that applies to all secondary schools. The one point that I would need to point out is that the 4-year graduation rate for South Kingstown High School is going to be different for the LEA. The LEA for students that we outplace, their graduation rate would be the graduation rate for the district and not for South Kingstown High School. And so that's why that's why those are different. Correct. Well, no, this would not be a school. This would not be of choice. This would be of our placement of students. Yep. So with that, are there any questions? If not, well,
More of a comment. I think I made the same comment last year, just that I think it is a poorly designed system, and RIDE should really, I think, be embarrassed to continue using it, because more embarrassed, they should be more embarrassed that they can't get consistent use of green and red, right? But I just think if you had a student who got 4 A's and a C, you wouldn't call them a C student. And they should not be rating schools in our state or districts in our state based on the, where they're performing at the lowest rate. I don't think I understand they're trying to target what they see as the greatest issues, but I don't think this is the way to do it. It's not how the tool's actually being used. And I think it's just poorly designed and poorly explained. They backed away from it a little bit last year when the state teachers union put out a statement about it, but they continue to use it. And I just think it's a poor representation of what's actually happening in our schools or any schools in the state.
Thank you. I just want to thank you for the work you put into it and also going through it and explaining the inconsistencies in the data and what causes them. Because I understand, I totally agree with Brad that it's a poorly designed system. But I do think there's a lot of encouraging data. And especially the hard work that's been done in all of our schools with chronic absenteeism. So, a shout out to all the good work that's been done there. I also think that there's been great work done at the high school. So thank you, Dr. McGarry and your team. The numbers reflect that. And also our graduation rate continues to be extremely strong. And I think that's due to the credit recovery program that we're able to run. So if any of our town councilors are listening, we need the funds to keep that program. But I do think that there's a lot that we can look at these numbers and be proud of.
I agree with Mr. Shear on the reporting out system. I had not thought of it as in terms of, the student that has 4 A's and 1 C being rated as a C student, but I think that's a really good way to look at it. I do notice, and nobody at the table is going to be surprised that I noticed this, that in our elementary schools, our math scores have gone down, have a negative rating, or however we want to put it, in except one, and that's like a little tiny increase. And so I just point that out.
So yes, thank you very much for explaining all this, because I actually have never had that explained at our table before in that level of detail. I think it's super important. But it also just kind of highlights, to Mr. Shear's point, how convoluted it can be. And unfortunately, perception is reality. And what happens is these stars get published year to year to year. They get compared year to year to year, knowing that for us, it's important, and especially our administrators and our education team, it's super important to know the details of what make the ratings up, so that you can put action items to them, which clearly our team is doing. And I think that's wonderful. I am curious about actionables that come out of it. I'm assuming that this is stuff that is, the SIT teams work towards it. Our educational leaders, put metrics in for that. I think that's great. And I look forward to hearing a little bit more about that from our leaders. I do think it's unfortunate because it's going to get compared year over year, even though that's not how they're built. And to the point that was made before about the student who has 4 A's and a C, and next thing you know, you call him a C student. But that's our reality and we live in it. And this is the data that we currently have at the moment. And I just, again, kudos to our school leaders and our educators for making do with what they have and working tirelessly to make sure our numbers improve year over year, regardless of how the scores are calculated. So thank you.
I would just like to highlight, in that if RIDE were here, they would be saying that this is to make sure that we're showing or making sure that schools are being accountable for all of their students. And we're trying to measure how well a school is performing for everybody who's in there. And what I would also like to say is that the administrative team are made up of our principals as well as assistant principals and assistant superintendent and director of student services. This is helpful to them because it's getting them data that they need because they were going to use it anyways. Because they are looking at this data and doing so in a way that's saying, how can I help these kids get to that level? I'm not hearing, oh, if it just wasn't for, or, oh, well, what's mathematically going to happen? So they are the moral purpose that we want to hear, that you want to hear from your leaders is what's being discussed and how it's being approached. It's not being approached. Dr. McGarr isn't looking at it, and while he knows it's 1 point, he's not going, okay, well, when does that filter? He's looking at it going, okay, what can I do? Who isn't getting, as well as who do we continue? Who are we providing for and who are we not? And let's make sure that all groups are served. And that's something else that behind the scenes is going on and that y'all should be very, very pleased with and impressed with. I know I am, and I would like to thank our administrators as well as our faculty and staff for tackling what is or can be a very complicated, convoluted process. They boil it down and go, okay, these kids are not meeting with success. What are we going to do about it? That's all I could ask for. So it's not in the presentation, but I would be remiss if I didn't include it.
Mr. Pedraza, I'd like to echo what Ms. Massananti said about not being presented with this data. I understand better now about why you only get 3 stars, even though overall you qualified for 5 stars. But in kind of looking at some of the little bitty things, not little bitty things, but small pieces of data, I'm pleased with where we're going with the chronic absenteeism, because that's so vitally important. I've always said you can't teach a kid who's not here. So, I mean, and I know that doesn't happen without hard work on the teachers and the administrative team.
It's also not, it's not just, okay, let's get kids back to school. That's part 1 or part A of, okay, now what are we going to do? How many years, how many months or weeks have they been absent for? Okay, how are we going to make up? How many years have they been chronically absent for? And so, and what plans need to be put in place, or what interventions need to be, or assistance need to be put in that way. We're starting to take a look at that and go, okay, is it year 1? Is it year 2? Is this something that's alternating? So while I also commend those, once we get them back into school, there's programming and there's, pieces to be put in place to support that and make sure that they not only keep coming to school, but we can get them back on track, or assuming they are on track.
Like Ms. Vedder said, maybe if we each repeat it once between now and budget season, the credit recovery program is really impacting us a lot. And so I repeat what Ms. Vedder said, if the town council is listening, we need that program funded. Thank you.
Just echoing some of the comments up here. I think it is an imperfect system, but the 2 pieces of information I take away from this, which I find valuable, I think that it sounds like the focus is where it should be, which is on the chronic absenteeism and then on the low performing subgroups. I think those are, to me, the most important pieces of information here. So we can really have our admins focus on where they need to focus on those pieces. I think everything else will follow from that. We'll get growth, we'll get improved math, we'll get improved ELA. The chronic absenteeism goes down, and we bring those subgroups up. Everything else is just going to go up naturally, I think. So it is unfortunate that we have this system and people do compare it. It's a very easy metric. Say, hey, this is a 3-star school over here. It's a 4-star school. 4 stars obviously is better, but you don't know if that 4-star school is 1 point away from a 5-star school or 5 points away from a 5-star school. I mean, it's a tough metric, but it is what people have to go by. It is what we have to live with. But I think those, my takeaway here is really it's important to know chronic absenteeism is going down, and we've identified subgroups that need additional supports. That's important.
Do you have anything else?
No, you will see this, or in terms of the data that's underlying here, this will come up again, not as a manner to, hey, let's get more stars, but if nothing ever changes, then nothing will ever change. So I'm confident that moving forward or in future presentations, you'll see this data again, and for program, whether it be changes or improvements that will be suggested, and actually some that will begin here tonight with the program of studies. So with that, I thank you, and that concludes my report.
Do I have a motion to accept the superintendent report?
I'll make a motion to accept the superintendent's report.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Hey, that'll bring us to school committee business. A, discussion action, South Kingstown High School Program of Studies. So we'll invite Dr. McGarr.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting me. If it's okay with you, I will get to this in a moment, but potential courses that we'd be running for next year. But I would like to take a moment to, if you're okay with it, introduce one of our senior students who proposed a course, which I'll talk about in a bit. But Jeff Hill, he is a senior at South Kingstown High School, and he has proposed a course, which was really neat because we haven't had that before. So, and he's really worked hard, and it's his senior project to do that. So, pretty neat. Yep. Nice job, Jeff. Yes, I will. Yes, but I just wanted to take a moment to say, I wanted to celebrate the fact that we had, we have teachers that propose courses, and but to have a student propose one, I thought was really kind of a neat thing, and I wanted to celebrate that. So, okay, we got that right. Next slide, please. Okay. Again, and some of this is similar information to prior years, but courses that run in 26-27, and I can't believe we're talking about 26-27. Will continue to be based on student interest and graduation requirements. So some courses might not have student interest, but there are graduation requirements. So there it is. But we do want to highlight the student interest thing because we want kids to be excited about going to school. And we hope that they're excited about our graduation requirements as well. But that's a little different in how we get those kids incentivized to do that. Just a reminder that the graduation requirements of the class of 2028 and beyond are 2 credits in world language. That has to be in the same world language, one of which can be taken at the middle school level, second, but at least one must be taken at the high school level. 4 in math, and that's different than what our current juniors and seniors have, which is that they have to take 3 math courses and then they can take a 4th one that is math aligned. 0.5 in the arts. So we pretty much had no issue with this at South Kingstown High School because everyone wants to dabble in at least one art class, which is awesome. But it is a requirement that they do that. And then we also have proficiencies in computer science, which is a new course that you approved last year. It's a quarter credit. It's a half credit course that is taken in 1 quarter, which is neat for students to be able to earn a half credit in a quarter. And it meets that requirement. And so all of our freshmen and all of our sophomores this year are taking it. And big shout out to Dan Vieira, who put the course together and is getting to meet all of our freshmen and sophomores and doing a great job that going forward, it will be offered to freshmen once we're there. The financial literacy, a big shout out to our health teachers who have adopted this. This does not have to be a course. This is a unit that is taught as part of Health 3. So that is really nice that they picked that up. They do have to do a resume before they graduate. That is done as part of their individual learning plan, and that is done through the school counseling department. And civics, which is aligned into our senior project course. So it's called senior project, but it's senior project and civics. So we meet that requirement through there. All right, requests for 2026-27. So skills for life. I don't quite have a better name yet, Jeff, but we're working on it, right? Yes. Okay, so basically his proposal was for a course that could fill that gap for things that kids should know how to do in life before they head out the door. And so it could be tailored. We haven't decided whether it's a quarter class or a semester class, but it could be tailored for the kids that are in it that want to sign up. So we're still working with it. We were looking for approval to continue moving forward with that as a possibility for next year. And you can hold off on that when we approve the whole thing, or if you have questions. But a few other things that we want to try out too. An ambassador peer tutoring pilot. So basically what we'd be looking for is a couple of juniors or seniors that would be willing to assist teachers in classrooms for credit. So it would be a class that they've already done well in or learned from when they were a freshman. And they're going in and with the right teachers, supporting that teacher in that class as sort of a peer tutor or an ambassador in there. So something that some other districts have done. And so we're looking to try that out. Construction management pilot. So our students in the CTE program, they take 3 years or 6 semesters of construction tech, but we have some students that knock that out by the end of their junior year, and they're really into construction. So this would be an opportunity for them in their last semester senior year to support. It's not that dissimilar to the ambassador peer tutoring one that I was talking about, but this would be very specific for construction tech. So almost like a lead student in the construction tech. And work-based learning for credit. So I talked to the Rhode Island Department of Ed, and what they're looking for is they're pushing for, and they have rubrics designed for this already, pushing for students to get credits for working. And so there's all sorts of rules that we have to figure out. They are pushing districts to try this. So I spoke with them a couple of weeks ago, and they said they'd love to have us try this out. So again, looking for permission to try these out. Some of them I'm looking for permission to even try perhaps in the second semester of this year. So those are some proposed courses. One other really cool thing that RIDE is on board with, but I want to make sure that the school committee is on board with, and that is Algebra 2 Pre-Calculus is 2 courses in 1 year, currently 1 credit. Italian 1-2 Accelerated, 2 courses 1 year, currently 1 credit. And next year we will have Italian 3-4 Accelerated, which is and that will be 2 courses in 1 year. What we're looking for, and RIDE is on board with this, is to offer 2 credits for these courses, for these accelerated courses. So wanted to just make sure we're all on the same page with moving forward with that. So those are some things that I'm excited about, and I know others are excited about, that we're talking about doing. So I do have a questions page, but I'm wondering if this is a good time to stop and see if there are questions, because I just threw a lot at all of you.
I have a question
Yeah.
on the, got a few. So I've got a lot of, I'm hesitant about the credit for work,
Mhm.
only because when I was a student, you could bus tables and get credit for it, and it didn't necessarily seem like it was a learning experience. So I'm sure you've got a lot of constraints at it, making sure it's some sort of true learning
correct.
experience. Oh, that's good.
RIDE has some rubrics that we have to meet in order to be able to provide the credit. So if the student doesn't meet the rubrics, then we would not be allowed to.
And then the other thing is, I mean, obviously my high school did this badly. They would allow you to take 2 classes so that you could do your morning classes and pretty much take off the whole afternoon because you were getting work study. So do you have a limit? Like, is it like just you can take one period of this course or?
That's a good question. So what RIDE has been supporting districts in is whatever you need to do to earn your graduation requirements. So it would depend on the student. So if you have a senior student who has taken care of a number of credits in their freshman, sophomore, junior year, so they're, let's say we have a number of juniors who will enter into their senior year with 20 of the 24, 20 or 21 of the 24 credits that they need to graduate. So a student like that, you could afford more elective space to do more of that. Whereas a student that is coming into senior year on pace would be 16 or more credits. If you're at 16, you really don't have a lot of space for this because we've got to get 8 credits. So it would depend on the particular student. So
Okay, I understand that.
Yep, yep,
That sounds
yep.
reasonable. The other thing I have, the accelerated courses, it makes sense that they would get 2 credits for an accelerated course. But these wouldn't be courses that you could earn more than 4 credits, correct? I mean, the reason I'm saying this is because kids are strategic
Mhm.
and some of them are looking to get the highest weighted GPA.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes. So the course their GPA would count for it, like for the would count for it as the one course into it, but the credits would be where you get the doubling up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I
That's a
just
good
wanna make
question.
sure.
No, yes.
These kids will figure out every way to boost their GPA.
Correct, yeah.
so-
So no, it's a good point, and I will make sure that if this moves forward, that is the case. So, yeah.
I just think it's great to, think of what the needs are of our current students because, needs, life changes and this should be, your course offering should be a living document that can change with the needs of the kids and where society is. So, thank you for all the work that you, the faculty, the students are all putting into this. So, I'll just ask anybody else if they have questions.
Um, Dr. McGill, I do have kind of a few questions.
Mhm.
The four math courses instead of the 3 maths and 1 math aligned. We've got your algebra 1, algebra 2, and geometry. And then what are some of the fourth course offerings besides pre-calc or calculus?
Yeah, it's a good question. All right, so we have math modeling, which is a math course where students are using math to model, right? So I don't mean model like, taking pictures like for a magazine.
I know what math
Yeah,
modeling
okay.
is.
I just wanted to make sure it was clear, like if other people listening, yes. So math, like how we use math in the real world to model things, like to predict things. Sports analytics is another course that's actually quite popular. We put these courses in place, big credit to our math department, because they tried these courses out before the kids like were required to do it. And they're filling these classes now as it is. So it's pretty neat to see that. So those are 2 of the math courses that jump out. And we're constantly looking at other alternatives if like the student need drives it. But those are 2 that are very popular right now and not required, but that kids take anyway.
That's
In addition to the pre-calc and calc. And I do want to point out that we have URI pre-calc for a reason. We have pre-calc, we also have URI pre-calc. So with the number of students that we have that go to URI, it's a nice opportunity for them to knock out a math credit at URI while they're here at South Kingstown High School. Basically.
And pre-calc at URI is the most failed class.
Well, we're having a good success rate with it.
Well,
Yes.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
So the algebra 2 pre-calc and Italian 1, 2, 3, and 4, we're still on block schedule, right?
We are, yes.
Okay,
At
so
this time,
yeah, tonight we are.
yes.
So that they would take that for the full year. So would they have like math every day?
No, so it would be one period, one block
It's
period.
only 1 period.
So the 2 of
but
the
it-
classes exist as we speak. The algebra
Ah.
2 pre-calc is not new. It's one, and the Italian 1, 2 is new this year. So they're taking it right now. The the request is to see if we could do it if they could receive 2 credits for it.
I think that's a very good idea because it is 2 courses and I can't even imagine the speed at which that is taught, but it will get them ready for college algebra at CCRI because that's that kind of speed. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
So I appreciate very much the requests for the proposed. I really enjoy the fact that you're listening to the students and bringing that forward. As you and I were kind of chatting about before the meeting, life is very different for this cohort of 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. If you don't have kids in that age pocket, you wouldn't believe it. The way they self-manage, the way that the life skills that they need, the communication skills that they need when they're navigating their own peer groups, especially if they're in the online world. It really is fascinating to watch and explore and how different that particular cohort, once they move up and they're the ones running the jobs of the world, it's going to be a very different look than what those of us sitting in the jobs of the real world right now are sitting in. So I love it. I think this is wonderful. It's an wonderful opportunity for the students, but a wonderful opportunity for South Kingstown to get ahead of these things. The ambassador peer tutoring pilot and the construction management pilot, again, same concept. These kids are learning so much outside of school, never mind in school, and being able to tap into these skill sets and leadership qualities, that what it drives job growth once you're out of school. I love it's almost resemblant of like TAs in grad school. I think it's a phenomenal idea. So I really love to see that. And of course, work-based learning for credit is huge. I don't have to say too much more of that, but the cost of living and the cost of everything, kids need to work more than ever. It's just a great opportunity, clearly with restrictions, trust that those will be put in place properly. But I love this section of the program of studies right now is really exciting to see. So thank you.
I just want to piggyback on what Ms. Manson said, and to the gentleman back there, way to go, advocating, using your voice matters. You are advocating not only for yourself, but for your peers coming up into the future. And what we need more of is leadership. And so keep at it, encourage your peers, and make sure they understand that your voices matter. Thank you.
And Jeff has been on the principals advisory group for a number of years, and I do appreciate running things by Jeff and other students. But so it's nice to have that. Okay, next slide, please.
Dr. McGarry, I'd just like to make another comment to our friend Jeff here. It sounds to me like what you're thinking of in this skills for life, and I may be like way out to left field, but I teach at CCRI, and I can't tell you, at least once a day, I hear, I never learned that in high school. And I think a lot of what I'm hearing might come out in a course like that. So thank you for your input.
Okay, so we do incorporate Thrive policies 1261 and 8440, the equity audit findings, and our school improvement plan into the course selection process. And so going through that, we make our course recommendations. Our school counselors taking the lead in educating and ensuring that 75% or more of students enrolled in at least one rigorous course. And you can see that, by the way, in the star ratings, because we were at 78% of the class of 2025 that achieved this metric. And 75 is the point that the state says if you're above that, that's the highest points you can earn for that. So that's why we have set that and focus on building trusting relationships. So these are important pieces of it. Next slide, please. Okay, so the tricky thing is, right, how do we continue to provide substantial offerings to students? So we drop courses that 3-year data shows students are not taking. 19 courses dropped for this school year and 10 more for next year. But we are constantly retooling courses, or we are to make them more relevant, or we're, as you can see, we're proposing other courses that make more sense right now. So and being creative with our schedule. And you can see at the consolidation there. So we're gonna have like rock band is what we are retitling piano and guitar to try and attract more kids. It's a few little tweaks to it. It's not a new course, but it's something that like more kids might want to be in rock band, because it's like we've got multiple instruments going on. So it's just trying to appeal to students and get them interested in all the different things that we offer here at South Kingstown High School. And the other smart thing is alternating courses that compete for the same student population. So what happens is if you run all of the, and science is a place where we really see this, all the AP courses that they offer, you run them in 1 year and you wind up with 7 kids here, 10 kids here. And that's like, do we run this course? I don't know. So what they're doing is they've got their 6 AP courses. They're running 3 this year. They're going to run 3 next year. Then they'll go back to the other 3. And the idea is that they know they're going after the same kids. So let's get it to 15, 16, 17, 18 kids in 1 year. And then those same 15 to 18 kids can take a different course the following year. So the idea is like rotating. So we're not giving the courses up. We're not putting kids online to take those. We're just being smart about it.
I just want to say thank you. I mean, this is the hardest part about declining enrollment, is making sure that you have the offerings when you end up with so few students that want to take a class. So by offering the accelerated classes, keeps your Italian program going. You know, the rock band that's a great way to combine instrument classes and you know, the every other year for your AP classes. I mean, just you're being very strategic, very smart about looking at the numbers and being efficient. And I know we all appreciate that, but also you're trying to meet the needs of every student. So I know a lot of hard work goes into this. I just want to say thank you to you and your team.
Welcome. And the other thing too is offering college courses and AP courses as soon as we can. So this is the first year that we've offered an AP social studies class to freshmen. And students can start taking URI classes as early as the 2nd semester of freshman year. So we've been doing that for a little bit longer, but the idea is like giving kids opportunities as soon as they're ready for it.
That's great, because I had kids like they didn't offer AP until sophomore year, and they were ready to take one as freshmen. You know, so those opportunities are great. Good for the students. So thank you for you know, bringing those initiatives.
Dr. McGee, do we have any kind of an issue with single section AP courses? I know these 3 you're offering, you know, 3 1 year and 3 the next year, but like to make sure AP English, AP calculus, if it is a single section that they don't conflict.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
that's kind of what I'm thinking of. I don't know if there's an issue of single sections of those particular courses.
yeah, so our goal is to keep fixing it. So what happened last year was we did a major retool of our master schedule. We had a master schedule that was working for a while, and then what wound up happening is that we kind of hit that tipping point in our student population, which is stable this year, which is awesome. But we kind of hit a tipping point the prior year where we were running into that problem. So, of course, we know we have 15 kids in the building that want to take this course, but we can only get 5 into the course. So now what do we do, right? So for an AP course, for example, or another singleton course. So what do we do? So what we did was we revamped the whole master schedule. And so we feel like it's better now. And so we're looking at the data this year for courses that have 10 or less kids or 15 or less kids. And so we're going to make some now minor tweaks to the master schedule to try and fix those little things that popped up.
Thank
So
you.
it was required that we do it. It was a lot of work, but now we can roll that schedule over and make tweaks instead of having to start all over again.
Thank you.
It's a constant battle trying to get it a little bit better. Yeah. All right. The next slide says any questions, but
I just want to say
yeah.
that's extremely hard to manage because you'll always have singletons and they always have. And I know my son had to choose between jazz band and honors French. I mean, you will find that you'll have conflicts. So, but to manage them as best you can is very helpful. So I'm glad you did look at it at a deep dive level.
Yes. And we also will take students that have tricky schedules and try and run it through the master schedule just to see if we can work those things out. As you point out, you can't always, but we want to do everything we can to try and mitigate it. Yep. Okay. So that concludes my program of studies overview. And the next slide is any questions, but so I don't know how we proceed from here now before we switch over to it's another agenda item.
So just clarify, do you want us to vote on what you've presented
That would
tonight?
be awesome if you could, yes.
Great.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve the South Kingstown High School Program of Studies for the 26-27 school year.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes.
Thank you. Was that? He wanted to come and see how the thing went. If you have questions for him, I'm sure he would be happy to answer them. Yeah.
Does he want to talk to us and tell us what you did?
Yep.
Come on,
Nothing
Jeff.
wrong with that, Jeff.
Okay, how can you be wearing a t-shirt and shorts? I'm wearing my snowsuit right now and I'm cold.
Yeah, he's younger than we are.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
You gotta talk right.
yeah. Is there anything like specific you like want to know?
What gave you the idea for this class? What was it that you thought, oh, we could really, my generation could really benefit from this type of class?
So last year I took a class called URI Intro to American Education, and it was like a really small class. It was 7 kids, and 4 of them were seniors who are gonna go to college. And 2 of them like didn't know how to like cook eggs, or like those little rolls of Toll House cookies. They couldn't figure out how to put that in the oven, turn on the oven and stuff. That made me like really see that like, well, I know how to cook and do a bunch of different skills that I need for like independent living. A lot of kids don't. And if they do, they don't have as wide of a array of skills. Like me personally, I don't know how to change a tire and do all that kind of stuff. So I would love to have that to kind of just fill the gaps between academics in school and just practical skills that can't always be taught at home.
Sewing a button on a shirt.
That's in my plan.
No, I think that is extremely needed. And I'm thinking, I don't know how to change a tire, so maybe I need a course like that. But
Probably have AAA.
That's the problem is we have like the roadside
Support.
assistance comes with everything.
Like one of the other things is like, I know for me, like my mom has the money to help me out when I'm in college, but doesn't want to, so I can learn how to be independent and kind of figure things out on my own. So I know like honestly, if kids knew how to change a tire, then they don't have to rely on AAA and like paying for stuff. if they know how to cook, they don't have to rely on going out for food every day, getting junk food from McDonald's or wherever. Sustain themselves. Kind of like stuff like that, I guess. And they don't have to go buy a new shirt. They can just sew a button on their old one.
The other thing is when I was a freshman in college, I can't tell you how many people did not know how to work a washing machine. So it is those things that you go away and you're like, Mom never taught me that. So I think it is needed.
I'm sorry, your full name again?
Jeffrey Hill
Jeffrey Hill. Nice to meet you, Jeffrey.
too.
So, leaders don't always have a title. And they oftentimes come from, in quote, the rank and file. And for those people who have the type of sense of who they are and are allowing themselves to be heard the way you are is really awesome. So thank you for that first. Second, as you are describing some of these life skills, I'm starting to picture like your class going outside and flattening a tire and, you know, everybody getting, you know,
Yeah.
under the jack. I don't know. But at one point I was a leader of quite a large sales team. And one of the things I put together was a program of actually going out to dinner with people so that how they engage in a dinner, especially as you start to go out into the workforce and there are times where you're going to be doing applying for jobs and things like that. Just knowing that on this side is the bread plate and this side is the drink plate, the B and D, are important things, right?
Yeah.
So I really applaud your efforts in figuring out just figuring out which life skills need to
Yeah.
be taught at this point. So I'm really interested in your agenda.
Yeah.
You know, that'll be interesting to see what that looks like. Good luck. Yeah.
A follow-up question on that. Do you have in mind, I know Dr. McGarry said that you were kind of sorting it all out and it's part of your project. I'm curious though, if you have things like concretely in mind or
Yeah.
it's still up in the air?
So I want to someone make it like open-ended. So topics I for sure want to include in the ideal world. I know it's gonna be difficult to figure it out. Like cooking stuff, baking, like cleaning stuff, like how to do dishes, like laundry stuff, like stain removal, sewing stuff, and the automotive, like change tire, check your oil, change oil, all that kind of stuff. But I also want units available for, like, if a student came up with a topic that wasn't on that list that they want to do, like maybe like a job application thing, like, oh, I have a interview for this internship or the scholarship that I really want, but I don't know how to go about writing that and how to present myself there. So leaving it some units open-ended for students to voice what they need.
Who do we?
Do you also cook and plan an entire meal?
That could probably work into like a lesson plan for a day. I know, for the cooking part at least, I definitely wanted students to be able to go to like sporting events, like football games and stuff, and cook food for them. So I know, I believe it was Cranston West, their culinary CTE has like this food truck that they go to the football games, make like hot dogs, burgers, grilled cheeses. So if students could do that, it's like community service hours or extra credit for the class or something. Like, I really want to make it able to where students can go out and do a lot of public service stuff, to engage with the community and still be getting like practical education in school.
Yeah.
My son spent the pandemic when he was locked down teaching his roommate how to cook because his roommate had no clue, couldn't cook, couldn't boil an egg. And So he said, this is great because I get to eat way more expensive stuff than I would be buying for myself. Because of collecting unemployment, he was making less money than he was on his job. And he said that as long as he showed the roommate how to cook the meal, like they were eating steaks like twice a week or 3 times a week. Yeah, swordfish, all the expensive stuff. I think this is an absolutely fabulous idea.
I think I might have missed Dr. Gear's introduction of you in the very beginning. Are you a senior?
Yes.
Yes, so this is your senior project.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, awesome. It's a great one.
Thank you very much. And thank you for coming forward and explaining your ideas. We really appreciate it. Okay, that will bring us to item B, discussion action, South Kingstown High School CTE application for the school year 26-27.
Before I get into this, I just wanted to clarify, for the 2 credits courses in one course, that I didn't say the word for the, like, including the current of the phrase, including the current students that are in it, do I need to go back to that, or was that your understanding when I was going over this?
We'll just let the record show that it's although the proposal is for the 26-27 year for the accelerated courses, they would take effect this school year,
Thank you.
correct?
Thank you. Okay, great. So what I've prepared for you is a brief presentation about our CTE application process. Okay. When we applied for our CTE programs 7 years ago, believe it or not, we created an application process that was approved by RIDE. We applied for the programs, you had to submit an application process. It was a very interesting time. Having at that point in time not known much about CTE programs, it was very much like and I was not alone in the state doing that. And it was like we were just really trying to figure this whole thing out. However, we noticed over time that some students were not completing CTE programs. And so we started to ask questions about the programs admission itself and how we're running the programs too, by the way. Like, so we've had to be reflective. And so we're required every 2 years to do a comprehensive local needs assessment, and which requires us to be reflective about these programs. We're due for another one this spring, but basically we did one in 2024, 2022, and 2020. And so 2 years ago, this is the
Just
second.
ask a clarifying question. Sorry to interrupt. This is student application into the CTE program, or is this applying for a CTE?
Okay, so a little confusing, but so 7 years ago, I was talking about our applications to the CTE programs, and then that was the end of that story. Okay, other than my professing to not know much about it at that time. That would have been the end of that story. Then I transitioned into the very confusing application process for kids in the program. Okay. All right. So hopefully that's a little clearer now, but I thank you because I didn't want to lose you guys. Okay. 2 years ago, we worked with the Rhode Island Department of Ed to improve our application for students into the program. Okay. Okay, so RIDE recommended applications that they felt were the best processes in Rhode Island. So they had us look at other application processes that they thought were the best in Rhode Island and the characteristics that they had. And learning from those applications and RIDE's expertise, because we ran this by them too after we redrafted, we came up with the process that we started using last year and are using again for this year. Well, with some input from school committee. Okay. So next slide, please. So here's how the process works. Students and their families apply between now and March 13th. So we've already got some people who have started applying, which is awesome. Eligible students are currently in the 8th grade or 9th grade. So why 8th grade or 9th grade? So it takes 3 years to complete the program. So the latest you can start the program is 10th grade. So that's the reason for that. And you have to be in high school, so that's why it starts in 8th grade. Requirements: complete the application by March 13th. One of the things that we want students to show is that they can meet deadlines, because that is a big part of completion of a CT program. Pass courses consistent with SK athletic ability. That is no more than 1 course failure. So that's consistent with other things that we have kids participate in. Attend school consistent with the Rhode Island standard for chronic absenteeism. That is 90% of more days in school. A teacher recommendation saying that I've seen this student in action and I think that they would be a good to do work there. And for out of district applicants only, this was something we added, was a successful interview. So it's not a hard interview, but it's us getting to know the student and the student getting to know us. And so we admitted actually 6 students from out of district, which is the most we've ever admitted in a year. And part of that process was they came to the school, had an interview, got to know people. So it wasn't meant to be, it's like any good interview, right? You're both interviewing each other. So that to me was something that RIDE recommended, and I thought that was a nice add for us. We don't need it for the internal students because we already have a pretty good understanding of who they are, or people at Broad Rock have a good understanding of who they are.
I had a question
Yeah, go
about
right ahead.
the requirements part of it. So the first line is complete the application by March 13th. Is the rest of it their performance up to a certain point? Like they're passing courses, they're attending school consistently. Is that to get into the program or to stay in the program?
Okay, so it's both, but I'll get into this right now because I was going to get into that in a little bit, but now is as good a time as any. Okay. So and actually on the other slide, we can go to the next slide, please. All right, so this is up to that point is what we're looking for. Now, in order to stay in the program, you have to continue to meet these requirements. There's some yeah buts in there. Okay, so students are provided an opportunity in the 2nd semester to demonstrate improvement in the area they did not meet. So I'm there with grades. So this is now 9th grade or 8th grade 2nd semester. I wasn't there with the grades. So I have an opportunity now to show you that I can pass classes. So now I'm working. I want to get into this program. So now I'm working hard. You're provisionally approved to go into the program, provided that you can show us that you're able to pass your classes, or that I'm going to come to school more. I recognize that I wasn't coming to school at the rate that I should, but over the next few months, I'm going to show you I'm going to come to school, and you can calculate pace for chronic absenteeism. So even if a student was absent 25 times between the start of the year and March, we can break down this many number of school days, and this is the number of days that we're going to expect you to be going to school. So they can demonstrate to us that this is important to them and that they want to be in there. So, and then they would get admitted in June.
So I have a question. So if they think, I'm not going to meet these requirements, so why bother applying by March? How do the kids know, like, I can still apply in March and maybe get deferred until?
We can add some language about the
I was
deferring
gonna say,
there.
like, is
Yeah.
there, just so they know, because what I would hate to see is a child be like, they're really interested, but they're looking at it and they're like, you know what, I'm not gonna meet that requirement, so I'm not gonna bother applying. Versus you still have a chance, as long as you get the application in by March 13th, you still have to do that part, right?
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it's
I
like.
think that'd be a good add
just-
to it. Yep.
Just so that we're not discouraging
Mhm.
kids from applying.
And I'm just gonna piggyback on what Kate's saying, and the reason why you're here presenting this application and the process of the CTE program is because we have some students that are being discouraged by this process, the way that it's set up. So I wanted to hear and see what the process actually is and where, see, I had the wrong application to begin with. I had an out of district application in my hand for the past couple of weeks, looking at it, saying to myself, it does reference in district, but we have a full separate application for our students. And I'm happy to see that. However, I have to agree with what Kate's saying, and why I'm here with this is because I feel like it's some of our students may be being discouraged to even apply because of the criteria that are in
Yep.
requirement.
So we definitely have to have criteria. Okay. And these are these are the metrics that RIDE recommends are the passing classes and not chronically absent. So we start with that at the baseline of it. But I hear what you're saying. We can easily add language and highlight that about, it's worth applying because you have a chance even if you're not there at that point. And we want it to be, we are really pushing for most kids to apply in 8th grade. Because the reality is that, like, if it doesn't work out, you've got time on the back end. You've got another year to demonstrate this, and we know you wanted to apply, and so we're going to help you. We also want to keep it for 9th graders because there are kids that might have thought, I want nothing to do with that in 8th grade, and now they get here and they're like, I do like this course, and now I want to go for it. So we do want to keep those doors open. The reason for the metrics. And to answer your question though, so they have to maintain these things to stay in it because we need the state measures that you're completing these programs too. So and coming to school and doing well in your classes is a way that you complete these programs. So, but even if I'm having a bad semester, you've already met with a bunch of adults. Now you're put onto like a watch, and so now you've got another semester to fix it. And so we're not like immediately saying, sorry, you failed 2 classes this quarter, goodbye. We're not doing that. We're working with kids where basically you would have to have multiple semesters of not doing what you're supposed to do in order for it to go that way. So I hear what you're saying, and that's an easy add, and we can highlight that in the application process.
I love that because in the job world, we have metrics, we have KPIs. If we don't meet our metrics and hit our KPIs in a particular 1 quarter, 2 quarter, you get put on PIPs, you get worked with, and then if you continue to not meet your metrics, you're usually asked to leave a company or a job. So it is super reflective of what you're preparing students for out in the real world. We all, most folks know what, especially if you're in corporate, you know what a KPI is, and you got to meet your metrics, and you have to show up to work every day. And so it really is, it's important to get those lessons ingrained as early as possible. So I appreciate that.
Dr. McGarrett, so if you're looking at a particular student who's an 8th grader and they're applying, the academics and the attendance, you're only looking at their 8th grade year up through March 13th.
So the reason we asked for 7th and 8th grade is for a reason. Okay. So if 7th grade wasn't so great, we're going to highlight more of the 8th grade. But let's say they're just not having a great 8th grade, but 7th grade, they did really, really well. That's why we want the 2 years worth of that data, because then we'll look at it and say, yeah, but you really did a great job here in 7th grade. So that's why we're asking for 2 years, not to say, hey, can we find other ways to disqualify kids? We want the more data so we can see like a trend here. 7th grade didn't go so great. 8th grade is going really well. That's awesome. So you're showing us that there's growth there. Or I'm not having a great semester, but look what I did in the past.
Okay, and so the same thing for a 9th grader applying to be in 10th grade.
Yep.
And so 2 other things on the on both metrics, the chronic absenteeism and the academics. Are we taking into consideration some kind of chronic illness or?
100%.
Okay, just want to double.
Yeah, we have
check.
to know the kids, right? Like it's so the handful of kids that might not be doing what they're supposed to do in the program, we really, really get to know those kids well. And it's a lot of conversations. It's a lot of offering of support, trying different levels of support. Really the only way that we're going to be dismissing someone from a program is if they've just gone through every stop sign and they're just not working with us.
Okay.
We do need the student to work with us too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because I know if my daughter was applying as a 9th grader to get in, based on the absenteeism alone, she wouldn't have made it because she was sick every time you blinked your eyes.
Yeah, and we're not, and more of the form letter stuff goes to the kids who are approved, right? It's like, here you go, you're in, you met the metrics, you're in, you're in. Like, we don't need to have long conversations about that. Well, where we're really digging in and spending more time looking at is the students who aren't there but took the time to apply. So how do we work with them?
So I would, this is the teacher and me walking into the school committee table. I would say you're gonna highlight the fact of this page that is on the screen. I don't know what page number it is, the like almost the second chances kind of thing. In my humble opinion, I think the guidance team at Broad Rock should be, like, that should be emphasized with them so that they, the guidance person at Broad Rock knows that eighth grader probably better than anyone. And, that way they can, a student that they know, really wants this and that the CTE program would be a good fit for them. They can push them into this. Don't look at this. Don't look at these requirements. Look here. You can do this.
Yes, and that's a big part of why we added in the teacher recommendation part, because it allows that was data we didn't have before. So now it's like someone is going to bat for the student too. And I think that's important.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm just curious. So did you have the highest number of applications from outside the district students this time?
So I don't recall the number of applications of outside, but I can tell you that we went from 5 students last year to 11 students this year that are out of district. So
And I think it's phenomenal. But I would kind of like to drill down and find out why. What is it? What caused the change? Can we go from 11 to 22? If so I'd be really interested in this to know, are kids outside the district just hearing that we have carpentry and CNA and, did they not know this before? Or, is it because we have a new exciting high school being built? I mean, it would like to know what's causing it so we can like grab that and, kind of run with it and do more of that. I also think that we do need to do a better job of getting the word out about our great programs. I don't think that students in other districts necessarily know what we offer. So I think we need to look at ways to get the word out better. But if we can find out what is the difference that now we have these 11 that we didn't before, it might give us some answers.
yeah, that makes sense.
I just have
Anything else? Okay, go ahead.
I just have one more question, although don't hold me to that. On the first slide that you showed us, there was one thing that you talked about. You noticed over time that some students were not completing CTE programs. Are you and the CTE faculty like digging down into reasons for this? And are there?
Yeah, so that was the other thing too. So we had so yes, it was questions that we were asking of students. And so sometimes it was, I was a freshman and I didn't know what I was doing. And so I don't like this anymore. So we are doing a better job also, and this isn't in this because it wasn't the application process, but we are doing a better job of really touching base with students at the end of the first year of the program to see if this is what they want to do. So you've now had some access to it, because what happens is once you get to past year 2 of the CTE program, you are now considered someone that the state expects to complete. They call them completers. So if they don't, then it becomes a metric that like is a negative metric for you. So it's doing more with the students to like really make sure they're interested in the program that they're in, and not like they wake up going into senior year and realize, boy, I hate this and I don't want to take these. And so what are you going to do? You're not going to make the kid take the course at that point, because they're going to be you're not gonna make them miserable, but we needed to do a better job of figuring out early. So that was one thing that popped up. And the other thing was, that some students just were they didn't really understand what they liked the topic area, but they didn't understand what they were getting into with CTE programs and the extra requirements there. So I like construction, but I didn't realize all the stuff I was going to have to do in the construction program. So it really, what we've had to also change is the education of the kids and like what the expectations are. So we've had to grow because, like I said, when we applied for these things, we were just like, yeah, this is great. We'll apply for some programs, we'll get them approved, and we did. And then you have to grow as a school to support the kids. So those are the biggest changes that came from faculty input. Yep.
Do you have numbers on the amount of students that apply for the CTE program and the demographics of who these students are?
Yes, not with me right now, but yes, we do have to keep track of all that for the state. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I asked that question because I'm just curious to know if, if we have students from our low income demographic areas that are actually applying. I do know that the requirements is one of the things that is deterring them from actually enrolling. So I'm curious if we do still have some enrollments.
We do.
And-
I can get numbers to the superintendent to share with all of you, but as you probably saw from when you were approving like our 5-year plan, that the numbers for some of our subgroups do not match the rest of the school. So we do have some work to do in that. And so as part of the comprehensive local needs assessment that we have to do every 2 years for RIDE, we have to set 3 SMART goals. And this inevitably is one of the SMART goals, is like is in our CTE programs matching the or getting closer to the metrics for the whole school versus with certain subgroups. And I say certain subgroups because some have like 1 student in them, so that would be 100% or 0. But for the subgroups that the state measures, we certainly have some work to do there.
But that the applications are different, but I have not really looked at in-district application as thoroughly as I have the out of district. And Michelle's looking at it now, but I was trying to skim through it. Is there a recommendation from teachers or guidance counselors as well?
Yes, and
Well,
that's big because we do want somebody, an adult, advocating for a student. Like that to us, that's really important. It's another metric that we look at. So if there's an area that's not meeting a metric, but we've got someone really advocating for this student who knows the student well, we definitely take that into account.
Consideration, it's not that it has to be.
I-
Like,
I'm sorry, can you clarify?
So you may have a student that does not or is not really engaging with their counselor
It doesn't have to be their counselor. It's a recommendation from an adult.
from any adult.
Yeah, so it could be,
within the-
this is a
Okay.
class that I'm absolutely killing it in. It's the only class I'm like really doing well. And then they ask that teacher to write it. It does not have to be the school counselor.
Okay.
I promise, this might be the last one. Well, I'm saying it might, I said, don't hold me to it. I know the enrollment in the CTE courses, not in a CTE program, is limited. But if a student is not enrolled in a CTE program, can they still take one of those courses as one of their electives? Or are they just restricted to students in that CTE
Right, so
program?
the answer is all of them, essentially, okay? But it's based on space. So if I have 27 seats in a particular class and I have 24 kids in the CTE program, that opens up 3 spaces that other students can fill in there. If it's 15 kids in a CTE program class, then that opens up 12 seats for other students. So we have it all the time where kids are taking these as elective courses. We just have to make sure, again, go back to the conversation about singletons, right? We have to make sure that we guarantee that we have space for these CTE program kids because they're admitted into the program. But if there's other available space, then other students are allowed to take it for elective credit.
So I have one final question, and it's about the CTE programs in general
Mhm.
versus just an application. You kind of opened the door a little bit in your first bullet point when you were talking about applying for CTE programs.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to hold you to it, and you don't have to answer it right now, but I'm curious if we are looking at other CTE. Right now, we have 4 CTE programs and then a couple of
Yeah.
different like pathways, career pathways. And I'm curious if there are any new CTE programs on the horizon that we might be either shooting for or, it doesn't have to be next year, but like, a pipe dream in the future.
So right now with everything going on, our focus has been on trying to make these 5 programs the most successful programs. We have rebooted some of the programs with ride approval because this wasn't working, so we changed it up. An example would be the way we rebooted computer science so that that there could be students could do a concentration in cybersecurity. So we've rebooted. We're continuing to do that. We're looking at another program where we're probably going to reboot as well. So right now, I would say the focus is on making sure that these are the best programs that we have. And the other thing that we've been doing is adding other career courses. So farm tech, for example, the UFD firefighting course. The course that Jeff had mentioned about the education course, we didn't really take off, but we were looking at the possibility of we had offered a URI education course that took off. We were going to do some other things. So we are trying those career courses as well. So I would never close the door to another CTE program, but right now I think the focus is on making sure that these programs are the best programs that we can have.
So I just want to go back to one thing that you had said about trying to get either your demographics, if you will, to match the
Mhm.
greater school's demographics. And that can be a difficult thing when you have an opt-in program because not everybody is engaged to the same extent to what's going on in the school. So not all parents are equally, connected. And you see this with any opt-in. And you have to be very careful because if you're reading things like metrics, like a magnet school does better than a general public high school. Well, if you subtract the noise because they don't have the same demographics, because it's an opt-in, not everybody opts in equally. When you take out the noise, they actually do pretty much the same. So, but it's hard for these opt-in programs to get the buy-in from certain communities. So I think we need to find a way to reach those groups and target them specifically just so they know more about the program and are encouraged to apply.
Yes, and that is happening through conversations. So it's happening with the AP courses. It's happening with the college courses, and it's happening with CTE. So a big part of the reason why we want to admit ninth graders is because we have eyes on them at that point. So these are conversations that we have with students. So it really does come down to relationship building at that point, and because it is an opt-in, right? And there's going to be more expected of you when you go into a program, but there are big rewards out the other end too.
No, it is more challenging, but we have to meet that challenge. So, but thank you again. And I don't think we need to take any action on this presentation or anything, but thank you for being here and explaining it to us and going and answering our questions that we had. Appreciate it greatly. Anybody have anything else?
Thank you, Dr. Gare, for the presentation and a more clearer understanding of this process.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Okay. Have a good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
The next item we have is C, discussion action collective bargaining, SKESP negotiations.
I will be recusing from this part of the discussion.
Hey, Jeff, you are welcome to leave if you want. We love having you here, but you don't have to stay. Okay, so action C or item C. I just want to report out that during our executive session that we did form a negotiating team, which is going to consist of Brad Shear, Stuart Lander, and I will be an alternate. And so we will be beginning the negotiation process, but that is all that has taken place to date. And with that, we're going to close item C and move on to D. But you got your steps in. Okay, item D, discussion, subcommittee updates. So we will go just as the order that they're presented here, budget and finance.
Don't have an update for budget and finance this time.
Okay, thank you. Policy and planning.
So for policy, we've been looking at various policies that we have on the books, some needed changes, maybe some new policies that need to come along. I know we've approved a few new policies here at the table already this session, and we'll be doing more. There's another one on the docket for this evening as well about the fundraising, which has recently caused some kerfuffles in the community. So I was really happy to take a look at that and get it clarified. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But yeah, we're just continuing to work through old policies, out of date policies, things that just aren't, we're just really focusing on the high priority things that need to be addressed more immediately. And then there are some older policies on the books we probably want to just look at refreshing and just reviewing and making sure that they're they're up to snuff. We're meeting about once a month in first Monday of the month. And so we've had a few meetings this fall season already, and we're going to have another meeting the first week of December on Monday in the admin building. So the public is obviously welcome to come and watch that meeting, and there's opportunity for community comment as well at all these meetings. So we encourage community involvement in that as well. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. I mean, it's just we've got more policies coming down the line, and we'll just keep working through them as they come up as priorities.
Great, thanks so much. Strategic planning.
So we have not met since the goals and priorities were adopted. However, I'm in the final stages of crafting the letter to faculty regarding the crafting or the student involvement in the crafting of the vision statements. So that should be going out by the end of this week. Additionally, I need time now that the goals have been set to sit down with administrators, because ultimately in the next stage of the game is coming up with or brainstorming out the initiatives in order to accomplish those goals. And then once those have been agreed upon or have been documented to be into place, those will go into we'll reconvene the strategic planning committee to get each school's initiatives up to date, as well as each school's report card, and then get to the committee, at which point the strategic planning process, at that point, most of it, as a strategic plan in and of itself will have been completed, and it then will become an iterative process. So again, we have the vision piece that is missing. That's going to be done by soliciting student voice and class participation. And then the administrators next on the initiatives, now that the goals, the priorities and goals have been set. And so I expect those to happen. My goal is to have those happen before the new year and brought before the committee.
Thank you so much. And then wellness.
So we've met once. We're the primary initiative we're looking at is continuing that work around school start times, trying to move looking at whether we should be moving the high school and middle school start times back. We have a subcommittee of the subcommittee who's going to try to plan a public workshop where we would bring experts in to explain sort of the issues, and get some feedback from whoever wants to give us feedback, which is anyone from the community, parents, teachers, students, anyone who wants to come. So we're hoping to plan a date for that, and also some discussion around the school, the food contract. So we have a contract renewal coming, and we're looking at how the committee should be engaged in the contract renewal for the food. And we have our next meeting's December 8th.
Thank you. Right, that will bring us to our next item. Item E, discussion action policy number 2110, fundraising, first read. James?
Yes, thank you. So this, as I mentioned earlier, the existing policy on the books is a little too onerous on our community groups that are trying to fundraise for the schools. We're talking about PTOs, we're talking about booster clubs, we're talking about really independent 501c3 organizations that had to go through, and under the current policy, have to go through and get school committee approval by October 15th. There's a form they have to fill out. And it's frankly too much. I mean, we should not be having to approve fundraising activities for PTOs in each of the schools. There already is a building use form. So if there's a fundraising activity occurring in a school, in my view, that is approval of that fundraising activity. And it's at the building level. I think it should stay at the building level. I think that fits in with the RIDE model of having the building based, budgeting. And that way the buildings can work with their PTOs, PTGs, and get, see what do we need? What do we need to do? What do we need help with? And that's really a building level discussion. Building level concern doesn't need to come to us at a school committee level. So what we did is we had some discussion in one of our policy meetings, and then Mr. Pedraza went through and rewrote the policy essentially to make it more reasonable, make it less onerous, and also add in a few other features to address donations, which we don't really have a donation policy. So this will put in place a policy around donations to the community, which falls under fundraising because that's a way to, get funds potentially. There's also some additional items for, solicitation restrictions and some language around philanthropic activities that were added to the fundraising policy. So I think it's fairly comprehensive. I think Mr. Pedraza did an excellent job on this. And I don't know if have you had it go through legal yet, or?
It was sent.
Haven't heard back yet.
I've not.
Okay, so yeah, so it's pending a legal review on this first read, but this is the first read, so it's open for obviously any adjustments and things that the committee here feels might need to be addressed, or things that we haven't covered yet. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
I just want to clarify. So it was sent as part of this agenda and did not receive. I did not speak to them directly about this policy per se, but I will follow up with them before the next meeting specifically regarding this. So, yeah, for the record.
Yeah, just make sure we're covered. We're not putting anything in place that would put us out of compliance with RIDE regulations.
Yeah, the only other component that I would add in here is that I would in terms of this policy, especially in terms of donations and making sure that we have conditional donations as well as unconditional donations, as well as the right to for refusal are important pieces, but also give us some of those leverage points to some of those initiatives that have been discussed, where if for how could things be sustained, or if things were out there in terms of fundraising activities and they were done as conditional fundraisers or as conditional donations, that can then be set aside into separate accounts that would then guarantee or potentially be used to guarantee sustainability. So in terms of longer term planning, that was included in the revision.
So just. Oh. I just had two things. One, there are restrictions on alcohol and gambling in the policy, and I think we need to add marijuana, either use or sale or any involvement, since it's legal now as our alcohol and gambling. But I assume we don't want to sell. If we had a dispensary open up in town, I assume we're not going to have a PTO event there, but we never know.
Are an independent 501(c)(3). If they choose to have a fundraising activity, that is their choice. That's not going to be on school grounds, so it doesn't fall under our purview.
Got it. Thank you. My other question is about sort of, there are several, I'm not sure if everyone does it, but several schools do some sort of move-a-thon, walk-a-thon, run, and those are often during school hours, and those are peer-to-peer fundraisers. They would seem to violate this policy because there are kids who are going out and asking, I assume mostly asking family members to donate. I think that's usually what it is, but it is sort of the format of those fundraisers, and they are happening during school hours currently. So, because it's basically the kids are going out for 20 minutes and walking around and around the playground. So I don't know if it's a real disruption, but I think we should ask the PTOs maybe about what those fundraisers are and sort of look through this. I know at least 2, maybe 3 schools are doing, I think Broad Rock does some version of it. Peacedale does some version of it.
Can I get clarification on that though, because I'm curious. The actual activity happens during the school day, but the fundraising as far as asking people to donate, I think happens outside of the school day. So I don't.
Right. So that there seems to be a restriction. I think there's a restriction on kids asking people for money. Is that, if I understand, maybe I'm not reading it right. So is it during the school day they can't ask, or is it they can't take an envelope home and say, would you give money to the school? I'm not sure exactly what that restriction, because it refers to Rhode Island state law making a restriction on elementary school students at least.
Right. Yeah. It says
By what I know about the fundraising efforts around like the walkathon or whatever. So students are encouraged just to ask family members only and not go soliciting in the streets for that. The fundraising, where I think you're saying it happens inside of the school, yes, but they're not asking for money at that point. They are implementing the actual walk during school time because that's the way it's always been set up.
So it does state restrictions on fundraising activities whenever possible. Fundraising activities should not occur during the academic school day and should not conflict with instructional programs. However, I've been deeply involved with these, having been PTO chair and planned a whole bunch of these. They do a very good job of trying to incorporate an instructional piece into it. Maybe it's about nutrition. The one at Peacedale, I think, was about book themes. So they talk about the books but I think because it says whenever possible, that leaves it open to the building principal to see if this is an allowable use for during the school day. But I do think it's because they do, it's team building. The whole school comes together. It's educational. It's an activity that they're out moving. So, and they're absolutely doing no fundraising during the school day, and they're only asking their own family. So I don't think that what they're currently doing does violate any of this, but I think it's a great conversation.
I mean, I would like those fundraisers to continue. That's why I bring it up, to make sure we're not banning them by somehow. So that's really, that's.
Are
my
you also-
concern is I don't want to end up with somebody looking at it and saying, oh, no, we can't do this anymore.
And if you're looking under solicitation restrictions, it would be a matter of, elementary students, we couldn't have elementary students raising funds for another organization. So for another 501c3, so a student group or elementary students raising funds for the school or but as, let's say, for the SPCA, for an outside, we can't have elementary students fundraise to then donate to or for the Boosters Club. They couldn't do a fundraise or sell booklets for them.
So perhaps we should clarify better what outside organizations refers to. So if it's like maybe what's included or what's excluded or included, where
Yeah,
it makes
and
most
so-
sense.
Okay, so that we'll need to make some changes, or I'll ask legal counsel for updates under solicitation restrictions, solicitation of funds for outside organizations, and then maybe throw an example in there. By elementary level students is not permitted by Rhode Island regulation. Solicitation of funds for outside organization by secondary students is permitted via student council organizations. So ultimately, what we don't want to become is we can't become a pass-through. As well as using our students who may or may not be interested in such causes.
Mr. Estivo, thank you for including in this the language, or Mr. Pedraza, because I'm sure this was a joint effort on the serving of alcohol and the gambling piece, but I'm wondering if you could check with legal on something, and I'm not sure how it would be worded, but something about that children could not be present. Do you know what I mean? If they're having something that involves alcohol or gambling, they meet the requirements of the licensed liquor retailer with certified liquor service. And for the gambling, the South Kingstown and Rhode Island State Police, but I'm not comfortable having kids in that environment.
Just want to push back a little bit on that, because if, let's say, Applebee's is having a fundraiser for our kids, which they do on a regular basis, they serve alcohol, and parents can go there with their kids. So I feel like we're overstepping and policing parents and what they do or do not do with their children. Clearly a fundraiser that would be, utilizing alcohol and gambling. That's not really our purview to tell parents what to do with their children outside of school hours. If there's a fundraiser going on, and it is at an establishment that serves alcohol and or they're doing some sort of raffle, which is what gambling is, or is a form of gambling, I think we're just getting into some murky waters there. So to me, I don't know what kind of environment you'd be bringing. I mean, kids go to Foxwoods with their parents, so
So
I
just,
feel like we're overstepping grossly with making any sort of restriction of what a parent can do with their children.
I guess I'm just, what's running through my head is past, what happened in the past.
That was at a restaurant. That was at an establishment that children actually go to. And there's alcohol served. A kid can't go sit at a bar, but a kid can be in a restaurant that has seats and they serve alcohol. So I think we're overstepping.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's fine. you know, I just, you know what you know where I'm going with this, and so, it just, the whole situation just frightened me, but
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah.
I actually agree with what Miss Massananti said, so.
Yeah, because I know I've been to a fundraiser at the Muse Tavern for Peacedale, so. Same idea. All right, any other feedback on this? Okay,
The one other piece that it is only a first read, but that's new on here that I know has been brought up before, and to get the conversation started. And we will want legal to weigh in on this, but in this policy, just to bring it out, and it is naming rights in for donations, and to get that conversation started. I just want to have the committee note that this policy says that the district does not accept donations with naming rights requirements. So that is something that I know we would want to discuss or might need additional time prior to this going forward for a more robust discussion once legal has a chance to put that in there. So I just wanted to be, I was remiss in not bringing that up when I talked about other things that were in here for long-term planning. That is another additional one that
I appreciate you bringing that up because that was actually what I wanted to talk about and I got distracted. So I appreciate you bringing that up because I am hesitant to have that in there because there are no currently, this would be the first time that a policy was put in place on that topic. There's this random policy on our books that just says that no one knows where it came from. There's no like creation date. There's no modification date. There's no documentation whatsoever. It just randomly says no building can be named after someone famous, deceased or alive or something like that. And there's like no history behind it or where it came from or why it's there. So the town ordinances do not have anything on the books around naming rights, and we've never had anything on the books. So I'm curious, is this because this is like a standard, or is this you just put it in there for discussion purposes?
for
or-
discussion,
okay.
because there was an appetite for that discussion moving forward, and that this would be a mechanism to have that and get legal counsel to weigh in to see if there was any Rhode Island general law that would prohibit, again, each state being different, as well as in some cases, the larger discussion of public finance versus private finance, then potentially having the ability to control or determine educational programming, and putting that, so went conservative in order to when in doubt, do without, essentially to start off on this policy and bring it forward for the committee's consideration.
So I'm curious the way it's written. So we have the right to refuse donations, conditional or unconditional if, and then you have your list of 7. We don't have to refuse donations. We have the right if we so
Correct.
choose.
Yes,
Um,
ask any principal every year. No, we would not like your old piano.
right.
Thank you for thinking of us, however.
And
we
so
cannot
by-
fit old pianos.
And by including that, number 7, the donation including naming rights or other recognition requirements, it doesn't mean we can't accept it, the donation. Where it gets muddy for me is that if it includes naming rights or recognition, we could accept the donation. That it just like we could refuse it if we'd like to, regardless of if it includes naming rights. I would just hate to exclude it out of the gate. We've never been faced with it to my knowledge. But I think we should be open to it. So I hesitate to have a start with that. But also I'm one of 7, so I'd love to hear other
I think-
people's thoughts on it.
I think the ability for people to name whether it's a building or a room or a seat in the auditorium is a powerful fundraising tool if we want to go down that path. I've seen auditoriums that have a name on every seat and everybody's paid for them. What I'd like to hear from legal counsel is do we really have the ability as a public institution to filter some people out? Maybe there's a person who gives us money who the school doesn't want to be associated with or have their name on our building. And can we say no to them because maybe they've done something or have a reputation for something that we don't want to be associated with? And there's a First Amendment that we're subject to as a public institution. So I'd like to hear from legal counsel. Do we have the ability, once we start letting people name things, say, well, that person is not somebody whose name we want to have anywhere in our building because of whatever they did. We actually say no to them, or do we get into somebody legal waters?
I hear you, but I don't believe it's best practice to refuse donations of any kind. You know, I mean, that's just my belief system with the level of donors out there donating for various different reasons. I think it would not be in our best interest to refuse donations ever. There,
So the best nation is a donation. Having said that, I've certainly had uh, back at you. I've had several conversations with different people about this, and do have an appetite and strongly recommend that we look into this in a way to, given our consistent coming up against budgetary issues, that if there's a way to not solicit, receive and accept donations from those types of organizations or people, individuals that could help us, uh, I guess, move the dial for funds that would be available for those types of things that we're looking to do, then by all means. And I do think there should be some element of the type of organizations or people that should have some parameters around that on some level to be vetted out, but I certainly support this idea.
I think that's where it gets tricky is like, you're saying we want to put some parameters around that, but I think that runs up against legal gray areas, like who's making that determination of who's an acceptable donor versus not. And that's not we shouldn't be put in a position to do that. And I think it's a dangerous slope to be going down, to say we're going to take donations from person A, but not person B, or organization A, but not organization B. Because if we do, we're going to have their name on something on the podium or on the stadium or something like that. I agree with the desire, and I obviously recognize there's budgetary concerns, and it's better to get things than not get things. But I think it's a dangerous road to go down to start naming things after people, and then who says, for how long is that name in place? Like, say something comes out and like, I don't know, we had obviously everything that went on with Confederate statues in the South. And, obviously there's a lot of recent historical, recent news that we can point to that illustrates the danger of doing this, or of accepting donations with a name attached. So that's where I'm coming from on it. And it just seems better to me to say, no, that's fine. We'll send you a letter of recognition and thank you for your donation, but we're not going to name the cafeteria after you.
don't we already have designated spots throughout our schools that were created by donations from people? I mean, our schools are basically donated to us by the hazards, like these buildings, hazard building, right? So I think it's a slippery slope when we start to refuse. And I think on this right to refuse, it should not say refuse, it should say rights to donations. And we do need to have legal really look at this component of this policy so that we're staying within the parameters of what Rhode Island general law will allow school districts to do. But I mean, we do have portions of our school buildings that are named due to donations.
I think if we look at number 1 and number 2, I guess that's where I was thinking, where we say the donation of the source of the donation does not align with the mission, values, or educational philosophy of the district or public education in general. And 2, acceptance would create actual or perceived conflicts of interest, which I'm assuming is based on number 1 as well. If those 2 criteria are met by whoever or whatever organization gets through those 2, then I see no reason why we wouldn't put a name on and accept the donation. I guess that's where I was going about vetting out. I was looking at really what those 2 parameters.
Yeah, I mean,
I also think it's important to remember that a lot of times naming rights is not always an individual. I mean, you could have a CVS pharmacy technician space because they donated everything for that laboratory space. And I would be like, yeah, we take that and we call it the CVS Pharmacy Tech Lab. I mean, so I don't want us to preclude anything by language here. I want it to be, we don't have to accept it, but we can accept it if we feel it's the right fit. I've seen CNN video production labs and school spaces because the equipment's donated to them by a particular company. So I think the right thing is to have legal review it with that lens to make sure that we have the right language, but I don't want to preclude if it's the right kind of donation.
I would think number 1, number 2, number 5, and number 6 would cover all the bases. And then the naming rights piece to me is a whole, I feel like that's just another discussion and potentially another policy. But I think for this particular policy itself, 1, 2, 5, and 5 and 6 really cover the intention of it all, in my opinion.
I would just say that, the one piece is that historically, in most, at least in Rhode Island, in terms of public education that I'm aware of, is that most naming rights come back to either service to the town, to the school, in recognition of people who have done things at, or who have served for an extended duration that extends for their overall philanthropic activities. And so that ultimately a space is being named for what someone has done, not for what they have donated.
That shift is changing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
like
Yeah, in other
distinctly, like
states, yeah,
in,
they're gonna have.
no, I mean, in Rhode Island,
Yep.
in Smithfield, in
Yep.
Lincoln, and there are areas where you have the Verizon in the media center, you have the Verizon Media Center, you have, quite
Mhm.
frankly, there are full districts. I don't think it's happened in Rhode Island yet, but full districts that are sponsored by Amazon. So, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we shall be wearing our patches. Soon we'll have patches.
We'll just have
on the-
drones to do everything.
under-
But I just, again,
Ask-
I think it's a great start. This is a great start. Legal definitely needs to weigh in. I think we're overthinking it though, because in many of especially at the university level, in many educational facilities, you have the Boss Arena is, well, it's not named CVS, but it's, yeah, exactly. So I think we're overthinking it a little bit, and but definitely have legal weigh-in.
Again, I would just, again, to go through, it's just a matter of but in terms of the perception, the perception as well as in K through 12 public education being funded by the public and the public's responsibility to fund public education. The more that we start to name things after corporations or rely on corporations and the products that they sell and getting that name in front of our children earlier and earlier as a condition for that, or as a prerequisite, or as a ubiquitous form of the environment of our schools is something, once we do, you can't go back because the money tree is not coming. So, easy to say in non-budgetary time when obviously we're facing those things, but again, it's everywhere where it's been implemented because it's been implemented and there's no going back. So just something that in terms of public education and where we get those funds from is might be recourse enough, or is one that gives me pause in terms of a philosophical, easy for me to say component, but hard to do.
Well, this is a broader discussion and we're getting away from the policy. I think Kate is right. For this policy, we've had a good first read. We do want legal to look at it. I think we're going to have to come back to this broader conversation though, because one of the things that I think might be brought forward when we have our new stadium is advertising and all of that. So something for another night, but I think this was a good first read of this policy. So since it's a first read, we're not doing any action, but we will move on to.
Ms. Vetter, before we move on, I think, Ms. Massaninti, do you know like the number of that policy that you referenced earlier?
It's 9305.
Thank you.
I just looked it up. It 9305. It is literally, I think, like 7 words. And it says new schools will not be named after famous people or places. Like that's literally it.
Okay, dead or alive?
No, it doesn't even say that. It just says will not be named new schools. So that excludes the Hazard Building, which is already named. New schools will not be named after famous people or places.
What if they're not famous?
They're not.
I didn't write the policy, so.
I'll point out
Hey.
Peacedale's also named for a person.
Moving on.
So I also think when we come back to this for a second read, if we filter out the whole naming thing as a separate discussion, I think we should bring forward anything from the town that references that. Nothing. Okay, thank you.
Okay. This will bring us to discussion action, transportation, independent route review. So I'm going to turn that over to the superintendent for to begin that discussion.
Thank you very much. So on November 4th, I received outreach from Dr. Mario Canario, the Chief Operations Officer at the Rhode Island Department of Education. Ultimately, RIDE has, well, let me read. RIDE's recent transportation systems manager contract included a fixed price to perform independent reviews of in-district bus routes and identify inter-district opportunities. This route review may be of interest for LEAs that use bus companies to route and provide transportation service, as every bus in use represents an annual cost of approximately $100,000. So additionally, this review would include preliminary observations and recommendations for potential inter-district transportation opportunities, i.e. multiple districts potentially in the future bidding a single contract for service, which would create economies of scale and fewer overall routes than each entity bidding alone. Essentially, let me boil it down. I need to respond to Dr. Canario and Ride by November 17th, as they have quoted us the price for South Kingstown for less than for $6,500, that would be our price to have an independent route review of our existing transportation routes. This would obviously not be binding with Ocean State. As we've talked about in previous meetings, that contract is up and going out to bid. But in working with Ms. Proctor, we have identified funds, or we can make those funds available if we wanted to do that. There was not time enough to call a transportation subcommittee and then bring it before them, so we wanted to bring it before this committee. I'm not sure of the past, but I believe that in the past that we've only had one vendor on our transportation bids. So again, the implications of doing a route review during where we don't, but that's up for the committee to decide. But we have identified, they're not surplus funds, but funds that can be put to purchase that if the committee is so inclined.
So if you remember when at the RICAS meeting, RISCA, I always say the wrong one, right letters, wrong order. So Mario was there and he recommended an outside review of routes because your own transportation company doesn't necessarily have any incentive to do the most efficient routes. That's where this is coming from. So I am super excited that Mario, and you know, he could have just thrown out that recommendation and left it there, but he's actively putting together so that school districts can combine and just and get that economy of scale from all of us doing it at one time and keep it at that 6,500. So I know we're in a negotiating year and everything, but I don't think this has anything to do with the vendor. What we come back with is like, no, you say 10 buses, we say 9, you know, and if every bus costs $100,000, one bus is a huge savings. So, yeah, I really heard Mario when he said this. It sounded smart to me, and he's done all the legwork. So I think it's something we should really consider.
Make a motion to accept the transportation independent route review by Ride.
Second.
Can we have a little more discussion on that? Yeah. Well, I lost my train of thought. Oh, what's good, like the product? Let's say, what's the end result of this independent review? So we get a independent review. They tell us the bus routes are inefficient. Okay. Now, what do we do with that information? Like we could go to Ocean State, but they could probably just tell us that's great, but you're our vendor and these are the routes we're giving you. Like, am I wrong on that? Or like how I'm just curious what the value add is.
Well, the value add is that if all of a sudden they identified routes that are running inefficiently, we would be able to go back and bring that forward to them and say, okay, why do you have this route? Why do you have it for 2 buses and not 3? And there might be some independent fact, well, that goes by URI, or that one needs to pick up other students. And so the traffic during the course of that day, because we have, you know, we can't get all students. Could we do it with a less, you know, with a less bus? Yes, but we wouldn't make it in under an hour. It would put the route over an hour and we would have those conversations. Or conversely, where they're saying, well, we really recommend an additional bus here, we would then have that what's currently in place, and potentially be willing, potentially modify bus routes to see if they are in fact if the route is doable as well. Because every year they come back, well, I shouldn't say that. During my tenure, so over the past year plus, they've come back and encouraged other buses, and we've stuck with what we believe is what's been currently routed and then what's gone through. We have not looked through reducing scope and scale. Last year, as you'll recall, was our first year in terms of going to a two-tier. So there was a reduction across the board. For us, knowing, hey, wait a minute, that was a reduction and we have some significant savings. We're going into year two, so now we have data points. Can we count on that? But going into budget season, knowing, well, we know we might not just be limited to that route, and having a point, as well as having a point for negotiations, should it come out in our favor moving forward.
So to follow up on that, there are actually, if I'm not mistaken, though we have gone with the same vendor, because of familiarity and ease of, knowing that we have, drivers and monitors, we are going out to bid, and there are 2, if not 3, vendors that it's usually between one of 2. So there is that component. They also do rely on the district to determine the route situation, especially because sometimes there's a really, like you may say, it's more efficient to go from A to B. And we may have information within the district that says yes, but there's a custody situation. There's, someone's on the sex offender registry list. So we're going to go, A1 to B, you're right. And so there are definitely one-offs when it comes to the routing of the transportation. And it is a conversation. It's not typically, the bus company doesn't typically enforce it. It's a conversation. I just think what it also would do is show the community that we're having an independent review when we are questioned. How come you have 20 buses pulling in here? Why do you only have 2 buses over there and they're always empty? And, that conversation to justify our routes and our bus capacity and things of that nature from an independent review. I think the price tag, 6,000 or 6,500 is key. If it was 10 or 12, I may speak differently, but I think that's a pretty reasonable cost point.
At this stage of the game of this fiscal year, I wouldn't be able to find those funds as readily, or Mrs. Proctor wouldn't have been able to, because again, please, this is not, we would be transferring from a non-transportation line. So we're going to go without or not purchase something or not go on a conference or whatever it may be in order to do this. So if the price tag were larger, it's not something that we would be able to do at this time, or that I would recommend at this time.
So, we have the money to do it. I get that. But I think based on what I was hearing from Mr. Restivo, I kind of agree. Is there something that we could get in advance to look at as to here's what you're going to receive from this? Here, maybe there's a report that already has been done similar to this for us to take a look at how that process went through and what the recommendations were already, so that we could get a sense of what are we going to receive for $6,500.
Getting that by the 17th, I'm not confident in my ability to produce that before I need to let RIDE know
No,
by the 17th.
have these been done before?
Yes. Yes, they were done, I believe, please, you all met with Dr. Canario ahead of time. I want to say Providence performed one of these, and I think some Northern schools got together in order to secure these services.
So we have not gotten to an outside vendor like this. I guess I put a lot of weight into that. Mario saw a need for this because he's the chair of a school committee in Lincoln. Thank you. So, and he put it together. That's why the Northern Collaborative did it first, because he's already done it up there, and now he's putting together one down here. So I don't think he would have if they weren't finding value with it, I don't think he would have replicated it down here. So I'm just kind of going on a lot of assumptions that watching Mario and the work and his logic through this. And he made a very compelling case at the meeting we were at for why school committees should do this. So, yeah, I think what we're going to get is a good report saying, you know, where we can be more efficient in our routes. And then we have conversations with our bus
Yeah.
company.
I mean, I think the cost is tiny in comparison to our transportation budget. So if it wouldn't take much to recoup the cost of the study in comparison to how large our transportation budget is. You know, unfortunately, the most sensible district for us to partner with owns its own buses. And so I don't know how that would factor into this. Maybe we would pay them to use their buses. I don't know. So that, I mean, that seems like a downside because it's the most obvious place where that we would see savings if we're collaborating. They probably wouldn't be part of that collaborative. But the cost seems so low in comparison to what we're paying for transportation that it just seems to make sense that we might get something out of it. That and getting, I would think we would, especially this year, being able to approach the bus company and say, you know, you're doing this really, you know, it can be more efficient, and we're just going to insist on it being that way. I mean, we're the consumer, right? And we should be insisting that they deliver a product that is what we want.
Yeah, and to that end, going into FY 27, you know, it might be validation of our existing route and our consolidation. So if all of a sudden they come, you know, that comes back, we are being fiscally responsible with and or, hey, if some into our next bid, if somebody comes back with, well, we'll do it, we can do it, and we anticipate X number of buses, we would have we'd have two comparisons. That might be, again, whether it be with the town that we've done our due diligence to make sure we're finding every penny possible, as well as then future negotiations or negotiations with the next bid.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. All right, next up. G, discussion action, recommendation for disposal of contents of Curtis Corner Middle School.
Okay, so in your packet, or really this is once again a kind of a culminating document of multiple conversations and presentations over the past few weeks, months, and for others years. Most recently, when we had the Studio Jade here to give us an update, we talked about the demolition of Curtis Corner. We've also talked about, and recently the committee took action, seems like eons ago, but was only this summer, to turn over Wakefield Elementary School. The clearing out of Wakefield Elementary School took a long time. And which doing our due diligence, having the time, having lots of schools that were still in operation, made sense. However, over the course of years, not only has Curtis Corner closed, but other facilities and classrooms and the lack of storage in some schools, Curtis Corner has become the default for unused, unwanted, not necessary materials in some cases. So it's become half warehouse, half time capsule, in a moment of time from when the world shut or when South Kingstown shut down, whether it be the things that are written on the board. Long way around the barn to say that the lift that it would take to do the same due diligence that was done with Wakefield, that my understanding is took ultimately years to do. To do that would take additional years for Curtis Corner demolition based on the amount of stuff that is in there. We have made a good faith effort the administrators, teachers, library media specialists, administrators who have come before us to go through and use, or take advantage of things that are going to be in use and that are needed. It is my belief and the administrator's belief, who as recently as last week went through and did a final walkthrough, that based on the amount of things that are in there, as well as the rooms that are going to be not part of the demolition, that each school can identify the last few remaining materials that it thinks it could use, place it into those rooms that will not be demolished, and everything else is in excess. Now, are those materials in excess of $1,000? I don't know. I don't know what beakers go for. I don't know what broken TVs may or may not go for, or the going rate for, desks. But I know that we have a surplus of them, and in talking with Phil from Studio Jade, that in terms of, does the demolition of the building, might we get better bids if all of this stuff is included, whether somebody's using it for scrap rather than just the building? Okay, yeah, that desk isn't a desk to them. It's again, it's what it's made of that can be salvaged, that can be part of it. And can we get a interesting bid? So it's with that in the background that I make this recommendation, because we do not have the time to stay up on in terms of this aggressive schedule, or not aggressive, the schedule outlined for the demolition of Curtis Corner. We do not have the personnel to do that. Would not have the time. It would put the reimbursement in jeopardy and put the project in jeopardy. And right now, I think in terms of how bids and things are coming in, we are in a good spot, and we want to take advantage of that. Or we would need, if we needed to go through an inventory or put every single thing up and put it onto Gov Deals and look at that, we would need to bring in an outside vendor, and we don't have local dollars to do that. And in order to do that, I would have to ask, hey, let's look to bond money to do that. The return on investment would be minimal. I think we're better off, based again on conversations that I've had, including those materials in the demolition costs. And so that the taxpayers were making good on the taxpayer dollars by making efficient use of our bond dollars moving forward and allocating that to that project for which they've approved moving forward. And that's the rationale of the memorandum before you this evening.
So I just want to clarify what you're saying for myself. So what you're saying is you include this stuff in the demolition, and that drives down the actual price. So there's a cost savings there for the demolition is what I'm trying to.
That's the thinking, is that if I were to say demolish this room without without the tables and all the things in it, it's going to be X. But if I know that I can get in terms of scrap, I could get X number of dollars, well, then my bid might be reflective not just of the demolition costs, but off of money that I could make off of the materials that are not normally included. Again, if they want to go off and sell the individual things and that's how they think they'd make money, then so be it. So be it. Conversely, if they think, oh, I'd scrap that and make the money back in scrap, then that can be reflected in their bid. That's my thinking.
Can I also interject?
Please.
There's a couple other factors too. Number one, the things have been gone through and put up on BidGov or GovBid, whatever it's called, by Brian Mahoney, when we went through Wakefield. Whatever has been put into Curtis Corner has already been sorted if it's come from elsewhere. So there's that component where it has had eyes laid on it, and people have taken what is useful. There's also the component of, if I want to demo this cafeteria, but before I demo it, I got to get rid of everything that's in here. That's on my dime. I have to come in and get this removed, and maybe I'm disposing of what's in here, or I'm storing what's in here, and it's causing, and I have to pay for that. And then we pay for the demo, where this is kicking it into one lump sum. So there's a cost savings there as well. We don't have to take the time, money, and as you said, the overhead to clean it out before it gets demoed. It's just part of the process.
There was a mention a while ago now about, I haven't been in the school for a very long time, but things like trophies and plaques, and has all that been removed?
I'm assuming the trophies and the plaques that are in that main area, that will be taken out
Yep.
before the demolition happens.
Yes. So they have not been taken out. They are still hanging. So awards, trophies, those are still in place but would be removed.
We have a, it's like a archive group that is, I believe Chip has put together with the high school, to make sure when we demo this building, that all the plaques and everything, and it's all part of the same thing. We'll make sure that all that stuff is taken and archived accordingly.
Be a good start for a new time capsule.
Oh,
But anyway, so I love the positive thinking and attitude about the idea that we could get a better bid by somebody who might come in and do the demolition, but then all of a sudden see all this stuff and they say, what are you doing with it? Well, we want you to take it, just get it out. Thinking that we might get a better bid versus possibly increasing the bid as a result is certainly also the other side of that equation, right? So while we would hope that they would see something to gain, they would also say, well, then go ahead, you just take it, you know? So I'm just playing devil's advocate a little bit to not get too hooked on the idea that this is going to be a positive return by doing that. But I certainly would make a motion to dispose of all of it and look to get, to have the current demolition company do away with it.
No, again, I can't, I can't guarantee for something that hasn't gone out to bid or hasn't got, come back with approval from RIDE, any cost certainty. I can say with cost certainty that we do not have the personnel or the time to get those things taken care of in a that is 1000% in line with existing policy. But I also believe that with this existing policy, we were talking about the routine disposal of items, not the disposal of items associated with the demolition of a school. Might just, again, pure conjecture, but again, getting the disposal of items for something that's no longer at use, let's say at Broad Rock, this policy works fantastic for. Again, the sheer amount of materials that are no longer being purchased and that we have readily access to. Again, the cost certainty, but again, the due diligence of review and making sure that we've taken advantage of all the things that we believe are useful to the district and making good with what the taxpayers have given us in the past. We've done right by them, and I believe would continue to do so by including it in the demo.
No, I think that was a motion.
Yeah.
Right, so I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have that, was going to go there. We have a motion to accept the recommendation for disposal of contents at Curtis Corner Middle School. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes. That will move us to H, discussion, school building committee update.
Yes, thank you. We had the town council, we had the presentation from Leffield at Monday's town council meeting. Everything is going along as planned. Our schedule is moving forward. We have like some key dates coming up. November 10th, which was 2 days ago, we submitted our anticipated building permit application. We have all our applications. This is just falling right into line as it should. So we have the foundation application, which has allowed us to do the work. And we're just moving along with the actual building permit application, which is all on schedule. Mid-December, we should be, bids are due for the remaining construction packages. That brings, then we would move forward into mid-January. Where we would have those numbers, it would be presented to school building committee, who would give a recommendation for that final GMP, and town council to approve as well. I do want to make sure that we get in there, a school committee, gets the same information and has, that seems, as I'm talking it at the school committee table right now, I'm like, our piece is missing from those dates, so I want to make sure that they put that in there. And then kind of the next big thing that we're discussing is the Curtis Corner demolition. We have the information has been submitted and we're waiting for the approval for that. We still, as you saw from the last presentation, by Left Field, we have the plan for the demolition. And then once we have that information and are moving forward, we can then start talking about Curtis Corner's actual design plan. But that will go forward after January, February timeframe. The foundation is progressing right along. We've moved from this side of the field to that. We're heading that way. It's moving along. If you've had a chance to peek through the gates there, it's kind of exciting. We do have there were a couple of butter concerns about the vibration when they were compacting the fields, but we've done our due diligence with surveying. And some of the folks who were experiencing the vibration were outside of our zone, quite further away. So we're in constant conversation with them and testing and making sure that that it's not causing any damage to their property. But it's a constant conversation between Gilbane, Left Field, and there are 3 abutters. But we're doing our best to be good neighbors. And the idea for the kind of key final milestones would be in January, we'd start the design of the athletic fields. And then by fall 2027, at the same time, we would be finishing up the build here at the high school. We'll be finishing up with the athletic fields simultaneous. So we're still on full speed ahead. Those are our plans and we're sticking to them. And we're working hard to do it. It is definitely a lot of moving pieces, but we have an incredible team, as you all know, that are working hard with us to make sure we stay on task and on time, on budget. That's it. Anybody have any questions for me?
Team is just doing a great job, like keeping us on track and keeping the information coming forward that's relevant to us all. And you're right, I do peek through the fence and it's just so exciting to see all that foundation already in the ground.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
The stamping down equipment, are they almost done with that phase? So that problem, those will go away quickly.
Yep.
Okay. All right, well,
Motion to
I was
adjourn.
excited to peek through the fence myself, and I'd like to thank you for all the work you've done, Ms. Massananti, and the rest of the building committee. I know they're working above and beyond. And I just want people to know that that's not going unnoticed.
Thank you. And I second your motion to adjourn.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned at